The merchant freighter drifted in silence near the asteroid field, engines cold to avoid detection. Robert Hayes watched through the viewscreen as three massive warships descended toward the colony below. Their hulls bore the symbol of the Galactic Council, a circular emblem that every species in known space had learned to fear. The colony planet was home to the Dralin, a peaceful species that had been mining rare minerals for centuries. They had made the mistake of refusing to hand over their newest excavation equipment to council inspectors. Now they would pay the price. Hayes had seen this happen before. The council controlled everything through simple logic. They possessed the strongest weapons, the fastest ships, and the most advanced shields. Anyone who challenged them lost. Anyone who disobeyed them suffered. For 8,000 years, this system had worked perfectly. The lead council ship fired a single warning shot. A beam of pure energy struck the mining facility, turning it into molten slag in seconds. The message was clear: surrender or face destruction. Hayes felt his hands tighten on the control panel. His ship carried medical supplies meant for a human outpost 3 systems away. He should leave. This was not his fight, but something made him stay and record everything. Down on the planet, the Dralin had no choice. They loaded their equipment onto transport shuttles and sent them up to the council ships. Hayes could see the defeat in their movements even from orbit. Another species broken. Another reminder that resistance was pointless. The council ships collected their prize and departed without another word. They did not need to threaten. Their reputation did that work for them. Hayes set course for human space, his recorder filled with footage of what he had witnessed. The journey took 6 days through the approved hyperspace lanes. The council controlled those too, charging fees to anyone who wanted to travel quickly between stars. Humanity had been part of galactic society for only 80 years. In that time, they had learned the rules quickly. Stay quiet, pay the fees, never challenge the council. It was the same lesson every younger species learned. When Hayes docked at the orbital station above New Terra, he sent his recording to Earth Military Command. He did not expect much to come from it. What could humanity do? They had fewer than 100 ships capable of deep space travel. The council commanded thousands. 3 weeks later, Hayes received new orders. Report to the military shipyard at coordinates he had never seen before. When he arrived, he found something unexpected. 12 human warships floated in formation, but they looked different from standard designs. Their hulls were thicker, reinforced with extra plating. Strange cylindrical structures ran along their spines, connected to massive power generators. No energy weapon ports were visible anywhere on their surfaces. Admiral Patricia Wilson met Hayes in the briefing room. She was a woman who had spent 40 years in Earth's Navy, back when humanity still fought wars among themselves. Her face carried the kind of tired determination that came from seeing too much conflict. "We watched your recording," Wilson said without preamble. "We have been watching the council for decades. They are bullies who maintain power through fear and superior firepower." Hayes nodded. Everyone knew this. It was the reality of galactic politics. "We cannot match their energy weapons," Wilson continued. "Their shields are specifically designed to disperse and absorb directed energy attacks. Lasers, plasma beams, particle cannons. They have counters for all of it." "Then what can we do?" Hayes asked. Wilson smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. "We go back to basics, back to physics that the council abandoned 8,000 years ago." She activated a holographic display. It showed one of the new ships, with detailed schematics of the cylindrical structures along its spine. "Railguns," Wilson said. "Electromagnetic acceleration of solid projectiles. We fire chunks of tungsten at 3% of light speed. No energy signature to track before firing. No beam to deflect. Just mass and velocity." Hayes stared at the display. The council stopped using kinetic weapons thousands of years ago. They considered them primitive. Exactly, Wilson replied. Their shields evolved to counter what they considered real threats, energy weapons. Their defensive systems are optimized for dispersing heat and electromagnetic radiation. But momentum, mass, they forgot about those. You want to shoot bullets at them, Hayes said slowly. Really fast bullets. Tungsten penetrators weighing 2 tons each, traveling at 9,000 kilometers per second, Wilson corrected. When one of these hits a council ship, their shields will not know what to do. The energy is not in heat or charge. It is in kinetic force. Hayes felt something shift in his understanding. The council had become so advanced that they had forgotten the fundamentals. They had built their entire military doctrine around energy warfare. Kinetic weapons were museum pieces to them, relics of primitive warfare. There is more, Wilson said. We need captains for these ships, people who understand that we are not trying to conquer anyone. We are just showing the galaxy that the Council is not invincible. Hayes looked at the ships again. They represented something dangerous and necessary, a challenge to an order that had stood unchallenged for millennia. When do we launch? He asked. Wilson's smile widened. As soon as you pick your crew. The Council is planning to seize one of our mining colonies next month. They think we will surrender like everyone else. We are going to teach them a different lesson. Hayes thought about the Drailan, loading their equipment onto Council ships in defeat. He thought about every species that had been forced to bow to superior firepower. The galaxy had accepted the Council's authority because no one could challenge it. Maybe it was time someone tried. I will need good people, Hayes said, people who understand what we are risking. You will have them, Wilson promised. And Hayes, this is just the beginning. We have other projects in development, things the Council thinks are impossible, but one step at a time. Hayes left the briefing room with new purpose. The Council had ruled through fear and technological superiority for 8,000 years. They had forgotten that technology moved forward, and that advancement sometimes meant remembering what had been left behind. In 3 weeks, they would find out what happened when someone fired back. 3 months of training had turned Hayes into something different. He knew every system on the HSS Defiant, could calculate firing solutions in his head, and had learned to trust his crew completely. Now all that preparation would be tested. The human mining colony on Keeper's Rock had been operating for 5 years without incident. Then the Council declared the entire asteroid belt to be restricted territory. They gave humanity 72 hours to evacuate. Everyone knew what would happen if humans refused. The Defiant emerged from behind Keeper's largest moon exactly on schedule. Hayes could see the Council enforcement fleet on his displays. 5 warships, each 3 times the size of his destroyer. They hung in space with the casual confidence of predators who had never known defeat. Commander Lyra Chen stood at the tactical station, her fingers moving across controls with practiced precision. She had been Earth military before the Defiant was even designed. Now she coordinated targeting solutions for weapons the Council had never encountered. They are scanning us, Chen reported, passive and active sensors both. Hayes watched the tactical display. The Council ships were definitely looking at them, trying to determine what kind of threat the human vessel posed. Their sensors would show the Defiant's power plants running hot, but no weapons charging. No energy signatures that indicated attack capability. To Council technology, the human ship looked unarmed. Admiral Wilson was right, Hayes said quietly. They cannot detect the railguns because there is nothing to detect until we fire. A communication channel opened. The Council commander appeared on the view screen, a tall being from the Veshran species. They looked vaguely reptilian, with silver scales and eyes that showed no emotion. Human vessel, the Veshran said in the trade language that all spacefaring species used. You are in violation of Council territorial restrictions. Power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. Hayes kept his voice steady. "This is Captain Robert Hayes of the HSS Defiant. Keeper's Rock is a legally established human colony. We do not recognize your territorial claim." The Veshran commander seemed almost amused. "Your recognition is not required. You have 1 minute to comply." The channel closed. Hayes looked at his crew, 23 people who had volunteered for this mission knowing they might not survive it. They all watched him, waiting for the order. "All hands battle stations," Hayes said. "Weapons prepare to fire on my mark." The Council ships began moving into attack formation. Their energy weapons powered up, creating the distinctive electromagnetic signatures that every species recognized as a prelude to combat. They had done this thousands of times before. They knew how ship battles worked. Close to optimal range, fire overwhelming volleys, accept surrender or destroy the target. The lead Council ship fired first. 3 plasma beams lanced across space toward the Defiant. Hayes had been expecting this. He had studied Council tactics for months. "Evasive pattern Delta," he ordered calmly. The Defiant rolled and accelerated, the plasma beams passing through empty space where the ship had been moments before. Council ships were larger and more heavily armed, but they were also slower. They had grown complacent facing enemies who could only run or die. "Railguns 1 through 4 acquire targets," Hayes said. "Fire when ready." Chen's fingers danced across her console. "Firing solution locked. Range optimal. Firing now." The Defiant shuddered slightly as 4 railguns fired in rapid sequence. There was no dramatic light show, no visible energy discharge. Just 4 2-ton tungsten penetrators accelerating to 9,000 kilometers per second in less than a second. The projectiles crossed the distance to the Council ships in heartbeats. Their targeting sensors never even registered the incoming rounds. One moment the Council vessels were maneuvering for another attack. The next moment, 3 of them simply exploded. The tungsten penetrators hit with kinetic energy measured in gigatons. The Council shields, designed to dissipate energy weapons, did nothing against solid mass traveling at relativistic speeds. The projectiles punched through shields, through armor, through internal compartments, through reactor cores. The ships came apart from the inside, secondary explosions tearing through their hulls. The 4th railgun round struck a glancing blow on the 2nd Council ship, tearing off an entire section of hull. The vessel began spinning uncontrollably, its crew trying desperately to restore power and control. The remaining Council ship, the one commanded by the Veshran who had ordered their surrender, seemed frozen in disbelief. Their sensors had detected the impacts, but their tactical computers could not explain what had happened. No energy weapons had been fired. No missiles had been launched. Yet 3 ships were gone and another was crippled. "Second volley ready," Chen reported, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what they had just accomplished. The Veshran commander made the only logical choice. The Council ship's engines flared to maximum power, and it fled toward the system's edge at emergency speed. The damaged vessel tried to follow, limping away on auxiliary power. Hayes let them go. The point had been made. The galaxy needed to see what had happened here, and running survivors would spread the story faster than any broadcast. "Stand down from battle stations," Hayes ordered. "Someone get me a damage report." "No damage to report," Chen said, and there was wonder in her voice. "They never touched us." The crew began to cheer, the sound spreading through the ship as people realized they had just survived what should have been a suicide mission. They had faced the Council's military might and won decisively. Hayes pulled up the tactical recordings of the battle. He would need to send these back to Earth Command immediately. The Council would respond to this. They would have to. For the first time in 8,000 years, someone had challenged their military superiority and proven that superior technology could be defeated by old ideas applied in new ways. "Communications, send everything to Admiral Wilson," Hayes said. Include full tactical data and sensor logs. Tell her the weapons performed exactly as designed. He looked out at the wreckage of the Council ships. Hundreds of beings had died in those explosions. He felt no joy at their deaths, only a grim satisfaction that humanity had proven its point. The Council maintained order through overwhelming force. They crushed anyone who resisted, but that only worked when you were actually invincible. Today, the galaxy learned that the Council could bleed. News of the battle would spread. Other species, other worlds that had suffered under Council authority would hear that someone had fought back and won. The political implications were staggering. "Captain," Chen said quietly, "what do you think happens next?" Hayes considered the question carefully. The Council would not accept this defeat. They could not afford to. If one species could challenge them successfully, others would follow. Their entire power structure depended on maintaining the illusion of invincibility. "They will come for us with everything they have," Hayes said finally. "This was just the opening move. The real war is about to begin." The Council's response came faster than anyone expected. 6 weeks after the battle at Keeper's Rock, 200 warships entered human space in a coordinated strike. They had modified their shields, adapted their tactics, and brought overwhelming numbers. This time, they would not underestimate humanity. Hayes stood in the command center of the Defiant, now part of a defensive fleet of 30 human ships. They were positioned near the primary orbital shipyard above New Terra, humanity's largest colony world. Every available vessel had been called back to defend it. Every crew member knew the odds they faced. "Council fleet detected at System Edge," Chen reported from her station. "Confirming 200 ships, multiple classes. They are advancing in standard attack formation." Admiral Wilson's face appeared on the communication screen. She was directing the defense from the military command station, coordinating all human forces. Her expression showed the weight of responsibility she carried. "All ships, this is Wilson. Hold your positions until they reach weapons range. Make every shot count. We will not get a second chance." Hayes checked his tactical display again. 30 ships against 200. Even with railguns giving them an advantage, the numbers were brutal. The Council had learned from their defeat. Their ships now carried reinforced armor and kinetic shielding adapted from captured human data. They had closed the technological gap in record time. The Council fleet advanced slowly, maintaining tight formation. They were not taking chances this time. They would overwhelm the human defense through sheer firepower and coordinated attack. "Range in 5 minutes," Chen said. "All railguns loaded and ready." Hayes opened a channel to his crew. "Listen up, everyone. We proved at Keeper's Rock that we can fight the Council, but today is different. Today they came prepared. We are going to hurt them badly, but we need to survive long enough for something else to happen. Trust Admiral Wilson. Trust your training. And trust that Earth Command knows what they are doing." He did not explain further. The crew did not need to know everything. They just needed to follow orders. The Council fleet reached attack range. Their lead ships opened fire with energy weapons, thousands of beams lancing across space toward the human positions. The human ships scattered, using their superior maneuverability to avoid the worst of the barrage. The Defiant's railguns fired, tungsten rounds screaming toward Council vessels. Other human ships did the same. Several Council ships exploded or went dark as projectiles found their marks, but the adapted kinetic shields absorbed many impacts that would have been fatal before. The Council had learned quickly. "Taking hits," Chen reported as the ship shuddered from near misses. "Shields holding, but we cannot sustain this." Hayes watched 3 human destroyers disappear from his tactical display, destroyed by concentrated Council fire. The enemy was using overwhelming force to grind down the defense. Simple math would decide this battle, and the math favored the Council. "All ships," Wilson's voice came over the general channel, "fall back to rally point Theta. Execute on my mark." Hayes checked the coordinates. Rally Point Theta was just empty space, nothing strategic about the location. But he trusted Wilson. She had earned that trust. "Mark," Wilson said. Hayes engaged engines, pulling the Defiant back from the engagement zone. Other human ships did the same, breaking contact and accelerating toward the coordinates Wilson had specified. The Council fleet pursued, sensing victory. They closed formation, preparing to finish the human resistance. Then something impossible happened. The Defiant simply vanished from normal space. One moment the ship was accelerating away from the Council fleet. The next moment, reality twisted in a way that made Hayes' stomach lurch. Colors shifted through spectrums that should not exist. Space folded in on itself. When normal physics reasserted themselves, the Defiant was 10,000 kilometers behind the Council fleet, perfectly positioned with clear firing solutions on their unprotected rear formations. Every human ship had made the same jump simultaneously. 30 vessels that had been running away now appeared exactly where they needed to be. The Council fleet's sensors went chaotic, trying to understand how ships could simply disappear and reappear light seconds away. "All ships weapons free," Wilson ordered. "Fire at will." The human fleet opened up with every railgun they had. The Council ships, caught completely by surprise with their most vulnerable sections exposed, began dying in rapid succession. Explosions rippled through their formation as tungsten rounds tore through engines and reactor sections. The Council fleet tried to respond, tried to turn their ships and bring weapons to bear. But human vessels were already moving again. Space twisted, physics bent, and 30 human ships vanished once more. They reappeared above the Council formation, firing down into their weaker dorsal armor. Then they jumped again, appearing on the Council fleet's port side. Then again, striking from below. Each jump was instantaneous, each repositioning perfect. Hayes felt dizzy from the rapid transitions, but he kept firing. The tactical advantage was overwhelming. The Council fleet could not track targets that could appear anywhere at any moment. Their numerical superiority meant nothing when they could not predict where the enemy would strike next. "How is this possible?" Chen asked, her voice filled with awe. "Quantum teleportation," Hayes replied, repeating what Wilson had told him in a classified briefing just hours before. A physicist named Ruth Park figured out how to entangle ships with specific coordinates. We can jump anywhere within the same star system instantly. No travel time, no predictable trajectory. The Council fleet was in complete disarray. Half their ships were destroyed or disabled. The remainder were fleeing in every direction, all cohesion lost. It was the worst military defeat in Council history, and they still did not understand what weapon had been used against them. "Cease fire," Wilson ordered. "Let them run. Let them tell the galaxy what they saw." The human fleet regrouped, their ships appearing in formation around the orbital shipyard. Not a single human vessel had been lost after the teleportation began. The technology had turned a hopeless battle into a decisive victory. Hayes sat back in his command chair, trying to process what had just happened. Humanity had developed two technologies the Council had either forgotten or never imagined. Railguns had shown that old weapons could still be deadly. But teleportation, that changed everything about warfare, about space travel, about the entire structure of galactic civilization. "All ships return to standard patrol," Wilson said, "and someone send a message to Earth. Tell them Phase 2 was successful." Hayes smiled despite his exhaustion. Phase 2. That meant there was a Phase 3. The Council had no idea what they had started when they tried to bully humanity. They were about to learn that being the dominant power meant you had the most to lose. Ambassador David Foster walked through corridors that had been designed to intimidate. The Grand Council chamber sat at the heart of the station that orbited the Veshran homeworld, a structure built to demonstrate power through architectural grandeur. Every surface gleamed with precious metals. Every window showed views of space carefully framed to emphasize the Council's domain. For 8,000 years, representatives from hundreds of species had walked these halls knowing they were powerless. They came to beg for permission, to plead for resources, to accept whatever terms the Council dictated. The 7 ruling species sat on elevated platforms, looking down on everyone else, secure in their absolute authority. Today was different. Today, everyone in the chamber knew the Council was vulnerable. Foster reached the speaking platform and looked up at the 7 thrones. High Arbiter Quantal of the Veshran occupied the center position, his silver scales catching the light. The other 6 ruling species flanked him, their faces showing various combinations of anger, fear, and poorly concealed panic. Ambassador Foster, Quantal began, his voice amplified throughout the massive chamber. The Council demands immediate explanation for humanity's unprovoked attacks on our enforcement fleets. Foster let silence hang for a moment. In previous meetings, human representatives had spoken quickly, nervously, afraid to displease the Council. Today he took his time, making it clear he was here as an equal, not a supplicant. Unprovoked, Foster said finally. Your fleets entered human territory with the stated intention of seizing our colonies. We defended ourselves. You employed forbidden technologies, Quantal continued. Weapons designed to circumvent our defensive systems. Technologies that violate the sacred principles of warfare established by this Council. Your sacred principles, Foster corrected. Principles that conveniently ensure only Council species can possess effective military force. You banned kinetic weapons 8,000 years ago, calling them primitive. We simply disagreed with your assessment. A murmur ran through the chamber. Lesser species, those who had been forced to accept Council authority for generations, were listening carefully. This was the first time anyone had openly challenged the Council's right to dictate technological development. And the teleportation, Quantal demanded. You have achieved what our greatest scientists declared impossible. You have broken the fundamental laws of physics. Foster smiled. No, we understood physics differently than you do. Your scientists dismissed quantum entanglement theory as speculation. Our scientists proved it was reality. The universe does not care about your declarations of what is possible. Another representative stood, a member of the Draylan species that Hayes had seen being bullied months earlier. If humans can achieve this, what else have you been wrong about? What other technologies have you suppressed? Quantal tried to restore order. This Council has maintained peace and stability across the galaxy for millennia. We have prevented catastrophic wars. We have ensured cooperation between species. You have prevented competition, Foster countered. You have ensured your own dominance. There is a difference between peace and submission. More voices joined the growing argument. Species that had never dared speak up were suddenly finding courage. The chamber descended into chaos, dozens of representatives talking at once, years of suppressed grievances pouring out. Foster let it continue for several minutes before speaking again, his voice cutting through the noise. Humanity proposes a new system, free exchange of technology between all species, democratic representation based on population and contribution, not military might, an end to territorial restrictions and arbitrary rules designed to maintain existing power structures. Never, Quantal said flatly. We will mobilize every ship, every weapon. We will crush this rebellion before it spreads. You already tried that, Foster reminded him. 200 ships, your largest fleet. It ran away after losing half its vessels to 30 human defenders. How many more ships are you willing to lose? The truth of that statement hung in the air. Every species present had received reports of the battle. The Council's military superiority, the foundation of their entire authority, had been shattered in a single engagement. Foster pulled out a data device and held it up. This contains the complete technical specifications for human railgun technology, power requirements, manufacturing processes, targeting systems, everything needed to build and deploy these weapons. The chamber went silent. Every representative stared at the device. I am prepared to share this information, Foster continued, with any species that joins a new democratic federation. Free technology exchange, mutual defense agreements, equal representation, no more ruling species dictating terms to everyone else. Quantil stood, his scaled face showing pure rage. You would destroy 8,000 years of order. You would plunge the galaxy into chaos and war. No, Foster said calmly. We would give species the freedom to choose their own paths, to develop their own technologies, to defend themselves without begging for permission. You call that chaos, we call it liberty. A representative from the Torvan species stood. They were a smaller civilization, one that had been forced to pay tribute to the Council for generations. The Torvan formally request membership in this federation. We accept humanity's offer. Another species stood, then another. Within minutes, 20 different civilizations had declared their intention to join the Human Federation. The Council's authority was dissolving in real time, their power structure crumbling as species saw an alternative to submission. Quantil watched his empire fall apart with growing horror. This is treason. This is rebellion. We will respond with force. Then you will lose, Foster said simply. We can appear anywhere, anytime with perfect coordination. Your fleets are designed for conventional warfare. They cannot fight an enemy that does not respect your rules of engagement. He paused, letting that sink in. But we do not want war. We want transformation. Join us. Accept democratic principles. Share your technology as we are sharing ours, or step aside and let the galaxy move forward without you. The council representatives on their thrones looked at each other. They had ruled through fear and military superiority for so long that they had forgotten how to do anything else. Now both advantages were gone, and they had no idea how to respond. Foster turned and walked out of the chamber, not waiting for permission to leave. Behind him, dozens of species were forming coalitions, making agreements, planning a future without council oversight. The old order was dying, and everyone could see it happening. In his quarters later, Foster received a communication from Admiral Wilson. 3 of the 7 council species are requesting private negotiations. They want to discuss terms for joining the Federation. Foster smiled. The council was fracturing from within. Only the most stubborn would resist now, and they would find themselves isolated and powerless. Tell them we will listen, Foster replied. But make it clear that everyone enters as equals. No special privileges for former ruling species. The galaxy was changing faster than anyone had imagined possible. Humanity had lit a spark that was spreading into a wildfire of transformation. The Veshran Empire refused to accept reality. While other council species negotiated terms to join the new federation, Quantil and his government chose defiance. They assembled what remained of their military might and prepared for one final, desperate gamble. Intelligence reports reached Admiral Wilson 3 days before the attack. The Veshran had called in every favor, every alliance debt, every threat they could make. They had assembled 400 ships, stripped defensive positions across their territory, and pointed everything at humanity's colonies. Wilson stood in the tactical center, reviewing the data. Commander Lyra Chen stood beside her, along with Foster, who had returned from the council station specifically for this meeting. They are going to hit 15 colonies simultaneously, Chen said, highlighting target locations on the holographic display. They have divided their forces to maximize damage. They believe overwhelming force applied everywhere at once will break our defensive capabilities. Foster shook his head in disbelief. They still do not understand. They are thinking in terms of conventional warfare, territory, fixed defenses, predictable response times. They are desperate, Wilson said. Desperate beings make poor decisions, but we need to handle this carefully. If we simply destroy their fleet, we prove we are no better than they were. We need to show the galaxy a different way. Hayes entered the tactical center, summoned from the Defiant for this critical planning session. You have a plan, Admiral. Wilson nodded. We are going to evacuate every human from all 15 targeted colonies before the Veshran fleet arrives. Then we are going to disable their military capacity without killing a single civilian. We demonstrate power and restraint simultaneously. The operation required precision that would have been impossible without teleportation technology. Human ships jumped to each threatened colony in sequence. Entire populations, tens of thousands of people, were transported to safety along with critical equipment and supplies. The process that should have taken weeks was completed in 18 hours. When the Veshran fleet arrived at their target systems, they found empty colonies. Buildings stood intact but vacant. Mining equipment sat idle. Communication arrays broadcast automated messages explaining that all humans had been evacuated and requesting the Veshran forces to leave peacefully. Quantil's response was predictable. His forces bombarded the empty colonies, destroying structures that contained no one. They wasted ammunition on targets that had no strategic value, firing at ghosts. While the Veshran fleet expended their anger on vacant worlds, human forces were implementing the second phase of Wilson's plan. 30 ships appeared in orbit around the Veshran homeworld simultaneously, not near military installations or government centers, but positioned precisely above civilian population areas. Foster opened a communication channel that broadcast across every frequency the Veshran used. His face appeared on screens across their homeworld and throughout their fleet. Quantil, this is Ambassador Foster. Your fleet is currently destroying empty buildings while human ships occupy orbit above your primary cities. We could fire on civilian targets right now. We could do to your people what you intended to do to ours, but we will not. Across Veshran space, people stopped what they were doing and watched. They saw human warships hovering above their homes, weapons clearly visible but not firing. Instead, Foster continued, we will demonstrate what actual military superiority looks like when combined with moral restraint. Human ships across the Veshran Empire executed their orders simultaneously. Railgun rounds, carefully calculated for precision rather than destruction, struck military installations. Shipyards were disabled with shots that destroyed construction equipment but left worker quarters intact. Weapon storage facilities were targeted with rounds that eliminated munitions but avoided personnel areas. Command centers lost their communication arrays but kept their life support systems. Within 30 minutes, the Veshran Empire's entire military infrastructure was rendered inoperable. Not a single civilian casualty was recorded. Not one hospital, school, or residential area was touched. The human forces had eliminated the Veshran military threat while demonstrating perfect targeting control. Quantil watched his empire's defenses crumble without a single civilian death. His fleet, still firing on empty colonies light years away, was suddenly irrelevant. Their homeworld was defenseless, their military production eliminated, their command structure severed, but their people were safe. The communication channel remained open. Foster spoke again, his voice calm and measured. Your fleet can return home, Quantil. We will not stop them. Your people will not be harmed. Your civilization will continue, but your ability to threaten others is over. On the Veshran homeworld, something unexpected happened. Citizens began gathering in public spaces, not in panic but in confusion and then dawning relief. They had expected orbital bombardment, the kind of total warfare the Council had inflicted on rebellious species for millennia. Instead, they found themselves unharmed while their military leadership's weapons were systematically removed. Quantil's government collapsed within hours, not through human action but through internal pressure. The Veshran people had seen humanity demonstrate the power to destroy them completely and the restraint to choose otherwise. They had seen their leaders' promises of victory exposed as dangerous delusions. The Veshran fleet received orders to return home, but not from Quantil. A provisional government, formed by civilian leaders and military officers who recognized reality, took control. They opened immediate negotiations with the Human Federation. Wilson watched the reports come in from the tactical center. 0 casualties on either side, perfect mission execution. Hayes felt something release in his chest that he had not realized he was carrying. We just defeated an empire without becoming monsters in the process. That might be more impressive than the teleportation technology. Foster smiled. That was the point. The Council maintained power through overwhelming force and willingness to use it against anyone, military or civilian. We needed to show that there is another way. Power without cruelty. Victory without vengeance. Chen pulled up a new display showing communication traffic across the galaxy. Every species is watching. The story is spreading faster than our ships could carry it. Humanity defeated the Council's strongest remaining ally without killing anyone. The contrast with 8,000 years of Council brutality could not be more clear. The last Council holdouts surrendered within a week. They had seen what happened to the Veshran and realized they faced the same choice. Join the Federation or become irrelevant, not through destruction but through obsolescence. Wilson sent a message to Earth Command. Mission accomplished. The Council is finished. The new Federation has 53 member species and growing. We can begin Phase 3. Hayes looked at her curiously. Phase 3. Wilson's expression turned thoughtful. Building something better than what we tore down. That is going to be the hardest part. 6 months transformed the galaxy in ways that 8,000 years of Council rule had never achieved. Foster sat in the new Assembly Hall, a structure designed without thrones or elevated platforms. 500 species participated as equals, their representatives seated in a circular arrangement that emphasized cooperation over hierarchy. The change was deeper than political structure. Technology flowed freely between civilizations for the first time in recorded history. Species that had been forced to use outdated equipment for centuries now had access to modern systems. Innovation accelerated as different perspectives combined in ways the Council had never permitted. Hayes had retired from active military duty, though retirement was perhaps the wrong word. He now directed the Federation Defense Academy, training crews from dozens of species in modern combat tactics and defensive strategies. The irony was not lost on him. Humanity had broken the Council's monopoly on military force, then immediately began sharing that knowledge with everyone else. Lyra Chen had taken command of the Joint Military Coordination Center, a position that required managing forces from hundreds of different worlds with vastly different capabilities and doctrines. The challenge was immense, but the potential was greater than anything the old Council had achieved. A signal interrupted the assembly session. Long-range sensors had detected something beyond explored space, not a ship, but a transmission. A message in mathematical patterns that no known species had sent. Foster authorized the communication to be played in the assembly hall. Every representative watched as the signal resolved into something comprehensible. A face appeared, belonging to a species no one recognized. Their features were difficult to describe, shifting slightly as if existing partially outside normal perception. "Greetings," the being said, speaking in the trade language despite having no previous contact with galactic civilization. "We are the founders. We have watched your development for a very long time." The assembly hall erupted in confused discussion. The founders were mythical, beings mentioned in ancient texts across dozens of different civilizations. Stories claimed they had seeded technology throughout the galaxy in the distant past, then disappeared. "You are not myths," Foster said, stepping forward to address the holographic projection directly. "No," the founder replied. "We are quite real. Millions of years ago, we reached a level of technological development that created moral challenges we were not prepared to face. We nearly destroyed ourselves through the misuse of power." The being's form shifted, showing scenes of devastation. Worlds torn apart by weapons that made human railguns look primitive. Entire star systems reshaped by technology that treated physics as a suggestion rather than a rule. "We learned that advancement without wisdom leads only to destruction," the founder continued. "So we changed our approach. We seeded technology throughout this galaxy, then withdrew to observe. We wanted to see if younger species could do better than we did." "The Council," Foster said, understanding dawning. "You created them." "We gave them tools and opportunity," the founder confirmed. "We hoped they would use superior technology to unite the galaxy through cooperation. Instead, they chose domination. They hoarded power and suppressed innovation. For 8,000 years, they failed the test we set for them." The representatives in the assembly hall listened in absolute silence. They were learning that their entire history had been an experiment conducted by beings beyond their comprehension. "Humanity passed the test," the founder said. "You developed technologies the Council had abandoned or never imagined. You defeated a system that had stood for millennia. But most importantly, you chose restraint when you had overwhelming power. You shared your advantages rather than hoarding them. You built bridges instead of empires." Foster felt the weight of those words. Humanity had not acted out of moral superiority or special virtue. They had simply done what seemed right at the time. The fact that it impressed beings millions of years more advanced was both humbling and terrifying. "We offer you a gift," the founder said. "Technologies that will allow you to reshape matter at the quantum level, to harness energy directly from space itself, to extend life indefinitely, to travel between galaxies as easily as you now travel between stars." Every representative in the hall leaned forward. The promise of such advancement was intoxicating. These were technologies that would make teleportation look simple by comparison. Foster exchanged glances with Hayes and Chen. They had discussed this possibility during strategic planning sessions. What would humanity do if offered unlimited power? "We decline," Foster said clearly. The founder tilted its head, an almost human gesture of curiosity. "You refuse our gift." "Not refuse," Foster clarified. "We request a delay. The galaxy is still adjusting to railguns and teleportation. We have 500 species learning to cooperate as equals for the first time. Introducing technologies that advanced right now would create more problems than it solves." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "You said you nearly destroyed yourselves by advancing faster than your wisdom could match. We just saw the Council fall because they had power but not the moral framework to use it responsibly. We need time. Time to build institutions that can handle greater advancement. Time to develop philosophical and ethical structures that match our technical capabilities." The founder was silent for a long moment. Then something that might have been a smile crossed its shifting features. "You understand the lesson better than we dared hope. Very well. We will wait. When you are ready, when your civilization has matured enough to handle what we offer, call for us. We will be listening." The signal ended, leaving the assembly hall in stunned silence. Foster had just refused gifts that could have made humanity the undisputed rulers of the galaxy. He had chosen wisdom over power. A representative from the former council species stood. "Ambassador Foster, you could have taken those technologies for humanity alone. You could have established dominance that would make the old council look weak. Why did you refuse?" Foster looked around the circular chamber, at hundreds of species working together for the first time in galactic history. Because we learned something important. Technology is not the measure of a civilization. Character is. Ethics are. The ability to choose restraint when power is available is worth more than any weapon. Later, in a quiet observation room overlooking Earth, Foster met with Ruth Park. The physicist who had made teleportation possible had been working on theoretical frameworks that made the founders' offered technologies look achievable. "You knew this was coming," Foster said. "You were already researching quantum matter manipulation." Ruth nodded. "Theory only. I could probably make it work given time and resources, but you were right to refuse. We are not ready." "Will we ever be ready?" Foster asked. Ruth smiled. "Maybe, if we keep growing, if we keep learning, if we remember that every increase in power requires an equal increase in responsibility." They looked out at the stars, at a galaxy transformed by two simple technologies applied with wisdom. Somewhere out there, the founders watched and waited. Other species were developing their own innovations, contributing to the shared pool of knowledge. The future was uncertain but full of possibility. Hayes joined them, bringing news from the Academy. 12 more species have requested training programs. The Veshran want to contribute their expertise in energy systems to the common database. Even Quantil has submitted a proposal for peaceful applications of their weapon research. Foster smiled. The old order had fallen and something better was being built in its place. Not perfect, not without challenges, but better. A galaxy where species cooperated by choice rather than coercion, where power was balanced by accountability, where advancement served everyone rather than the few. "The Council ruled through fear for 8,000 years, Foster said quietly. "I wonder how long we can build through hope." "Only one way to find out," Ruth replied. "Keep building."